Yosemite National Park. It's a sanctuary, a place where people come to feel the breath of the wild, to see untouched landscapes, and to dream in the silence of the mountains. Winding trails stretch toward mirror lakes and rushing rivers. They lead to massive peaks and into grim, shadowy canyons. The nature here is mesmerizing. Every year, hundreds of thousands of people flock here from across the country, from all over the world, just to touch this unique place. But this beauty has a dark side. Welcome to the Missing 411 Deep Dive. Tonight, we're talking about the case of Stacey Arras. It's an incredibly fascinating story, filled with theories, and it's a case that fits squarely into the phenomenon known as Missing 411. Stacey Ann Arras was born on September 29, 1966, to George and Carol Arras. She had 3 siblings: Sandra, Stephanie, and George Jr. The Arras family followed that classic American tradition of giving their kids names starting with the same letter, at least, for the girls. In the 60s and 70s, California was brimming with optimism. Stacey grew up in Saratoga and went to school in nearby Sunnyvale. These were prosperous towns. Safe. The kind of places where kids rode their bikes down the street and played hide-and-seek at dusk behind manicured green hedges. Stacey was a child drawn to nature. Her mother often took her into the woods. Mountain air was nothing new to her. Her childhood was filled with books about travel, faded photos of mountain peaks tucked into albums, and a restless urge to hike wherever the city asphalt ended. By 14, she was a true tomboy, an adventurer. Friends remembered how they'd climb trees together, build forts from branches, pick berries, and catch frogs. She loved literature, she was a good artist, but most of all, she loved photography. Her little Olympus camera was her constant companion. Stacey was especially close to her father. They chose routes in the national parks and set off on adventures. As she got older, she pushed for more challenging hikes. She wanted to test herself, to prove, mostly to herself, that she was ready for the adult routes. In the summer of 1981, she was getting ready to be a sophomore in high school. She had a full head of blonde hair, a stylish cut, blue eyes, a typical California girl. But in July of 1981, 14-year-old Stacey and her father, George, were planning a 4-day horseback trip into Yosemite. Lately, there had been some disagreements between them, and this trip was meant to be a chance to reconnect. From what we can tell, this was just typical teenage friction with parents. Nothing serious, just a slight tension. But they were both equally excited about the trip. Stacey wasn't packing as a kid her dad had to watch over. She was packing as a young, independent explorer. Before she left, she joked with friends that she'd bring back a roll of film worthy of a magazine. No one could imagine that those photos would never be seen. On July 17th, Stacey and her father arrived in Yosemite. The plan was to ride during the day and stay in campgrounds at night. Yosemite is one of America's most popular nature preserves. Founded back in 1864, more than 4 million people visit every year. The park is enormous, over 1,100 square miles, 3,000 square kilometers, spread across the Sierra Nevada mountains. But this beautiful preserve has its grim side. Every year, 12 to 15 people die in Yosemite. Falls, accidents, drownings, or hypothermia. And since the beginning of the last century, hundreds of people have vanished here. Many were never found. Among tourists and rangers, there are legends, rumors that sound doesn't carry in these mountains, that a scream for help simply dissolves, as if in a fog. They say ghostly figures sometimes appear on the cliffs of Half Dome, that in the twilight, you can see a distant light that lures travelers, then vanishes, leaving them alone, at the mercy of the wilderness. Our story begins on a high-altitude trail leading from Tuolumne Meadows. This photo was taken that day. Stacey is in the saddle, smiling, ready for an adventure. You can't see her eyes because of the shadow, but she looks excited. She doesn't know this will be her last photograph. On July 17, 1981, Stacey and her father joined a small group. About 10 people in all, mostly strangers to each other. Their guide was a park employee named Chris Grimes. From the Tuolumne Meadows stables, the group headed south on the John Muir Trail, stopping for lunch before continuing the long climb to the Sunrise High Sierra camp. They were climbing to an elevation of over 9,400 feet, 2,800 meters. This isn't extreme altitude, but it's high enough to cause altitude sickness. Breathing gets shallow, headaches start, the body tires quickly. The group was on horseback, which at least saved them the physical exertion of the climb. Around 3 p.m., the group arrived at the Sunrise High Sierra camp. This camp, founded in 1961, offered rare comforts in the high country. Small cabins, showers, and cots. A place to rest and acclimate. At the camp, Stacey and her father left their horses and sorted their gear for the night. Stacey took a shower and changed. She put on a white t-shirt, striped shorts, a light windbreaker, and an ankle bracelet. Her dentist had told her to wear her retainers even on the trip, and she had them. She put her Olympus around her neck. And, hidden from her father, she slipped a pack of cigarettes and some gum into her pocket. She decided she had time to take a walk to one of the nearby lakes. They said the photos there were especially good. Besides, she wanted to stretch her legs after a long day in the saddle. Stacey asked her father to go with her to the lake, but George refused. He was exhausted from the ride and the altitude. He let Stacey go alone, but asked her to put on her proper hiking boots. She listened. If they arrived at 3 o'clock, by the time they'd settled in, it was probably around 4:30 or 5 p.m. Still plenty of time before sunset. Days are long in July. Just as she left the cabin, she ran into another member of their tour group, Gerald Stewart. He was 77 years old, also from California. They chatted and decided to walk to Sunrise Lake together. But how to get there wasn't clear. They asked camp staff for directions, but the explanation was vague. Other tourists they met didn't have clear landmarks either. Finally, they went back to their guide, Chris Grimes, and confirmed the direction. Excited, the two of them set off down the trail. The closest lake was about 1.5 miles, 2.5 kilometers away. But the altitude quickly got to Gerald. The altitude sickness and his age took their toll. He sat down by the trail to catch his breath and suggested Stacey go on without him. After all, that was her original plan. Chris Grimes, who was still back near the camp, happened to notice Stacey standing on a large rock, looking into the distance. This would be the last time anyone ever saw her alive. Late in the evening is the vague timeframe sources give for when people truly started to worry. Gerald was the first to become concerned. Stacey should have been back before dark, but she never appeared. He met another group of hikers, asked if they'd seen a girl with a camera, but got a negative answer. He returned to camp and raised the alarm. The search was chaotic at first. Camp staff walked the perimeter, hoping she had already returned and just hadn't checked in. When that hope faded, they used the radio to call the park rangers. A real search operation only began the next morning. Everyone assumed Stacey had spent a cold night alone in the mountains and that she was probably fine. Rescuers and volunteers joined the search, about 150 people in total. It seemed everything was done to find her alive in those first crucial hours. Events moved quickly. By July 18th, helicopters were scouring the area. The search area was defined by based on natural barriers and, quote, where no one in their right mind would go. It's possible something was missed in those first hours. What if she turned the wrong way and managed to climb a rock face that was considered an insurmountable barrier? They wouldn't have searched there. Then there were the dogs. K9 units were on site with German shepherds, trained to pick up any human scent. The problem? They are good at finding people in general, not a specific person from their scent like a bloodhound. At night, temperatures in this area dropped to near freezing. Stacey was only wearing a light jacket and shorts. But hope remained. Now, Stacey's father, George, finally called Carol, her mother. They hadn't wanted to worry her. The rangers assured him they'd find her in a couple of days. They didn't. The search helicopters returned to base on July 20th. No results. On July 22nd, part of the rescue team left. By the 23rd, the group was cut in half. On July 26th, the operation was officially terminated. The National Park Service spent nearly $100,000, about $340,000 in today's money, and they found absolutely nothing. It's as if she fell through the earth, one ranger said. We didn't even find a gum wrapper, rescuers admitted, and we know she had gum. She also likely had cigarettes. She didn't smoke a single one. Not one but was found. You'll see information online that they found the lens cap from her Olympus camera lying right on the trail. But official search reports never mentioned this. On the contrary, they said nothing was found. Where did this lens cap story come from? It would have been a valuable clue. I'm inclined to believe it's either a rumor or it was leaked by someone with access to her sealed file. Oh yes, her file is sealed. Even today. We'll get back to that. Hikers who have walked that same trail today say the terrain is deceptive. From the camp, the trail to the lakes is mostly downhill. It's a gentle slope. As one hiker put it, it's pleasant. You get out from behind the hill, and this magical view of the valley opens up. It's easy to walk quickly. It's easy to go far when you're 14 and full of energy, drawn forward by the view. The ground is covered in massive granite slabs. Easy to climb. But here's the problem. What's an easy walk down is a grueling climb back up. At 9,400 feet, you run out of breath fast. And those large granite slabs? They don't hold footprints. So what happened? After the news broke, the theories started. Many eyes turned to the 77-year-old man, Gerald Stewart. He was the last person known to be with her. A 77-year-old man still has more strength than a 14-year-old girl. But police spoke with him and, apparently, cleared him. He wasn't considered a suspect. And frankly, it's unlikely. This man was so exhausted by the altitude he couldn't walk a mile and a half. How could he overpower a strong teenager and then successfully hide a body at that altitude with no one noticing? The name Cary Stayner, the infamous Yosemite murderer, was also mentioned. But there are no direct links to Stacey's case. A serial killer theory seems doubtful. The area was remote, but other groups were nearby. Abducting her would have been incredibly difficult. Theory 3. A simple accident. In the mountains, one wrong step is all it takes. A slippery rock, a crevasse hidden by grass, a sudden dizzy spell from the altitude. If Stacey was focused on her camera, she could have fallen. But the search was massive. 150 people and helicopters. They should have found something. A boot, the camera, a scrap of clothing. Theory 4. An animal attack. A mountain lion or a bear. It's possible. But official statistics don't back this up. There are no documented fatal bear attacks on humans in Yosemite's history. And an animal attack is messy. It leaves tracks. It leaves blood. It leaves remains. Again, the searchers found nothing. Theory 5. She ran away. The tension with her father. A rumor she missed a boyfriend back home, which her mother denied. But this makes no sense. Why run away in the high wilderness, miles from any road, with no gear, no food, in shorts, just before dark? It's illogical. Which brings us to the 5th version. The one that lands this case in the files of David Paulides and the missing 411 phenomenon. Now, I know Paulides is a polarizing figure. He separates his serious investigations, where he demands justice for families and answers from park services, from, well, his other interests. He's searched for evidence of Bigfoot. You need to know that. But for me, that doesn't diminish his other work. And when Paulides, a former cop, tried to get the file on Stacey Arras, he hit a brick wall. More than 40 years have passed. Stacey's parents are gone. Gerald Stewart is gone. All the key witnesses are dead. Paulides filed a Freedom of Information Act request with the National Park Service, NPS, for everything related to Stacey's case. He soon received a call from an NPS special agent. The first thing the agent said was, "Why do you want these materials?" Paulides was honest, but also told the agent, "I know my rights, and your question is inappropriate." Paulides describes the call as one of the most unpleasant conversations he's ever had with law enforcement. The agent was hostile. He asked Paulides if there were any suspects. "No." "Is it a criminal investigation?" "No." is classified as a missing person case. A cold case. Paulides pushed. Then let's get it public. The agent's response, according to Paulides, was a direct quote. You will not see a single page from her file. Ever. When Paulides asked why, the agent just stonewalled him. Why such hostility? Why hide a file that, by his own admission, no one had looked at in years? But then Paulides learned one more thing. The size of the file. Stacey Arras's case file is 2,000 pages long. 2,000 pages. Paulides, who has reviewed dozens of these cases, says he has never seen a 2,000-page file for a simple missing person case. What could possibly be in there? What was so complicated? What were they trying to find? Or trying to hide? The National Park Service doesn't want you to know how many people disappear in their lands. If we knew, we'd be furious. It's about control. It's about maintaining the image. Everything is safe. Everything is under control. In another famous case, that of Dennis Martin, the files were eventually released. Thousands of pages. But Stacey's case remains sealed. They claim it's an open investigation, which is why they can't release it. It's this secrecy, this aggressive refusal to release a 40-year-old file on a 14-year-old girl, that fuels all the speculation. It makes you wonder, if it was just a simple, tragic accident, why the 2,000-page secret? What really happened to Stacey Arras on that granite ridge? And what is the Park Service so desperate to keep hidden?